So let's go through some of the things you should prepare for kind of before you launch into the project. Some of the things you want to get ready um, that will make the whole process smoother and easier. Of course, a big thing is you want to evaluate your current website. So we're talking about redesigns. We're assuming you have some kind of website or web presence up there already. So a big thing is to look at your analytics and in your search review. How are people finding you in search in Google, other search engines? Are they finding you through the keywords that you want? What pages are popular? You're going to want to look in your analytics section, see what pages are popular, what pages are not popular. Keeping in mind how people get to those pages. Perhaps you have a page that's not popular, but it's really buried and people don't find it. So you'll discover all that by evaluating your current website. Part of that too is a UX or sort of user experience review, is reviewing how people interact with your site. And this can be really critical. Sometimes uh, people aren't going to a certain page or using a certain link, and it could actually be a UX problem. It could be that button or whatever it is, it doesn't look enough like a button. Or even sometimes there's areas where people click and they think they can click, but they can't. It's not a button. So the navigation and how people click through your site, use your site, and the pop-ups and anything you have that's interactive, that UX review is real important for sure. And of course, the content review. You may be bringing over a lot of the content you already have. You may need to tweak it if you've had changes in your brand style and your tone, or if your priorities have shifted. You, of course, want to preserve high-performing content. Say you have a great page with a story of one of your clients or participants, and you're getting a higher click-through rate, and your donation button on that page will definitely pay attention to that content and reuse that content. So for analytics, of course, Google Analytics is probably the tool you'll have and use. You're going to want to look at your top pages and your top entry pages, how people get in, so sort of how the flow through your website. And hopefully you have some custom events or goals set up. Not everyone does, but hopefully you do. That's very important, especially the custom events you can track in analytics. For instance, many nonprofits may have a large donation button, and that may just link off right to another donation platform. If that's the case, a click on that button is not actually tracked in Google Analytics out of the box. You need to create a custom event to look for that click, because keep in mind, Google Analytics only is tracking things loading on your site. So hopefully you have those set up and you can kind of judge the performance of your pages on that. We talked about this UX review. So a UX review usually is going to require tools beyond Google Analytics. This here is a tool called Crazy Egg. Crazy Egg is a heat map and scroll map program that puts visual aids over your website design to show you where people are clicking and scrolling and interacting, how far they're scrolling, things like that. And all those user interactions, like I said, that are not tracked by default in Google Analytics, things like clicking a play button on a video, clicking a donate button that goes off site, all of those types of things, you need additional tracking to track that. And a big part of the UX review is looking for technical and accessibility issues too. Accessibility has always been important, but becoming more and more and more important. We have a whole webinar, I think actually more than one, on that subject. And so a redesign is a really good opportunity to tackle accessibility issues, make your site more accessible, make it work for more devices, for screen readers, for people with different abilities. That's very important, especially in the nonprofit market. You want to be able to serve everyone online. And unfortunately, sometimes those accessibility issues go a little bit beyond quick fixes. So definitely, if you're going to embark on a redesign, take a close look at accessibility. Another shot of the Crazy Egg tool, which is really cool, that separates, mobile. It's going to separate mobile views and desktop views and tablet views, even on the same page, which is really interesting to see how people scroll and interact with different devices. So that's very important for a redesign. It's nice to know how differently people use your content on phone versus, computer or different device. So another part of preparing is to kind of look at your objectives. What are your objectives? So if you're going to embark on a redesign, take as much advantage as possible to improve everything, right? Improve accessibility, improve SEO, improve your positioning, set up new goals for what you want your website to do for your organization, all of those things. So some reasons you may do a redesign is your mission or services may have changed. Did you add a new service? Are the old services and your old mission, have those priorities changed? Does it need a refresh? Is the marketplace that you operate in, has it changed? For instance, if you're, food shelf or housing, you deal with housing insecurity. Have you built new buildings? Are you expanding into other areas of your location or state? Um, are there other people you're partnering with now, or do you have sort of people competing to serve those same people? So how are you positioned? And then your goals. Hopefully you had goals for your previous site and you were tracking that to kind of see, how is this site helping our organization? How is it performing? If you don't have goals for sure before you embark on a redesign, maybe think about that, what we could do, what would be the goals we want our site to do for us. And that will help you judge, how well did the project go? How well is your website working? You can also go the extra step of getting some real feedback from people. So internal people, perhaps you have, people who take phone calls, and people are always calling because they can't find the same thing on your website. And that perhaps is a signal that you need to change your website to make that information more available, right? You probably want to cut down on calls, not increase calls. So internal feedback, external feedback, and you can actually sort of poll and survey real users if you want with tools such as Hotjar. This is a tool called Hotjar. Crazy Egg, Hotjar, these tools sort of beyond Google Analytics are usually paid. They cost something. Hotjar is a little bit more expensive than Crazy Egg, but it actually does everything Crazy Egg does and more. And it's pretty useful, even if you just run it kind of for a limited time. I'm gonna switch the poll here for a second, and we'll talk about then the types of redesigns, because there's a few different types. So it looks like in the poll, most people, the vast majority of people, their website's quite old, over 5 years old. So it's definitely time to think about a redesign, I would say. So feel free to answer those polls as I switch them up. So there's a few types of redesigns, right? You may be doing what we call sort of a full redesign. You are just overhauling the entire website. You may be doing that because you need to move platforms. Maybe the platform your website's on isn't working anymore, or it's outdated or something. You may have all new branding. Say you've really changed your brand, new logo, new colors, or your just website is really old and it kind of needs an update. So full update is probably actually the most common. It is pretty common for the redesigns that we do. They're kind of a total overhaul. You could do a partial, and a partial maybe you're doing a new header and navigation. Maybe a lot of your website is working fine for you, but people can't find things, or the navigation's not mobile friendly, or it's not accessible, right? Or something isn't working. You may want to do just that, or you may do just a new homepage or landing pages. So this is an incremental improvement type thing. Many times, actually, if we catch a nonprofit in their budget cycle and they don't have the budget for the full, but they have some money, a partial redesign can be a good stopgap measure if you have some serious problems, right? I've worked with a couple nonprofits. They have some serious accessibility problems or SEO, or there's something broken with their navigation. And so this is a good kind of intermediate step while they, raise the funds for the big redesign, or, there's also kind of expansions where maybe you're not really changing much of the site at all, but you're putting in a whole new section. Many times that can be like a resources section, or say you have a new service or a new initiative, and you just want to add, and your site is good and you like it, and it's working, but you have to add a whole new section. So that's typical with new missions, or sometimes it's a seasonal thing. Sometimes it's an event. You're having a very large event or fundraiser, or maybe a month-long capital campaign. You want to add a whole new section for that. We do a lot of sort of resource libraries and expansions to sites where they want to provide more things to help their community, and that's a typical thing.